The blizzard that night in Copper Ridge, Montana, wasn't just bringing death to Sarah Holcomb's door. It was bringing salvation dressed in matted fur and desperate eyes. But she wouldn't know that until she followed a starving dog into the wilderness, toward an abandoned cabin that held secrets powerful enough to save 2 dying towns. Sometimes the most broken creatures among us carry the keys to redemption. And sometimes when you've lost everything, the only direction left to go is toward the impossible. Before we dive into the story, if you love tales of unexpected hope and the powerful bonds that form between the most unlikely souls, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more heartwarming stories tomorrow. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love knowing our community stretches across the world, connected by these incredible human moments. Now, let's continue with the story. Sarah Holcomb pressed her face against the frosted window, watching the last of her chickens disappear into the darkness, their panicked squawks swallowed by howling wind. The wolves had come again, 3rd time this month. Her stomach clenched, not from hunger, though that was constant now, but from the knowledge that she'd just lost her final source of eggs, her last tradable goods. In the back room, 5-year-old Emma's fevered breathing rattled like autumn leaves. The doctor wanted $3 for medicine. Might as well have asked for $300. The knock at the door made her jump. Nobody visited anymore, not since James died in the mine collapse 8 months ago, leaving her marked as the widow who brought bad luck. She opened it to find not a person, but a dog. Mangy, scarred, ribs showing through patchy fur. Part of its left ear was missing, torn away in some old violence. It stood there in the swirling snow, not begging exactly, just looking at her with eyes that held too much intelligence for a simple stray. "Got nothing for you," she whispered, her voice cracking. It was a lie. She had a handful of cornmeal left, saved for Emma's morning porridge. The dog didn't move, just kept staring, snow gathering on its scarred back. Sarah tried to close the door, but something in those eyes stopped her. They weren't desperate or pleading. They were evaluating, like the dog was deciding something about her. She'd seen that look before, in her own mirror, the morning after James died. The look of a creature calculating if survival was worth the cost. "You're hurt," she said, noticing the limp, the way the dog favored its right front paw. Blood had frozen in the fur there, dark and crusted. Against every practical bone in her body, she stepped aside. The dog entered slowly, cautiously, leaving red-tinged snowprints on her floor. She gave it half the cornmeal, watched it eat with careful, deliberate bites, not wolfing it down like a starving animal should. When it finished, it looked at her again, then curled up by the dying fire. Sarah sat in James's old chair, wondering if she'd just signed her daughter's death warrant by feeding their last food to a dying dog. Outside, the blizzard raged harder, and somewhere in the darkness, she could swear she heard wolves howling. But for the first time in months, she didn't feel entirely alone. Tomorrow would bring whatever tomorrow brought. Tonight, 2 broken creatures shared warmth while the world tried to freeze them out, neither knowing that this moment, this choice, would change the fate of hundreds of souls across 2 dying towns. Dawn came pale and bitter through the cabin windows. Sarah woke to find the dog standing by the door, but when she opened it, the creature didn't leave. Instead, it limped 3 steps into the snow, looked back at her, and whined. Not a hungry whine, something urgent, almost human in its insistence. The dog repeated this pattern twice more before Sarah understood. It wanted her to follow. "Can't leave." "Emma," she said to the dog, as if it could understand. But Emma's fever had broken in the night, the first good sign in days. Mrs. Brennan next door owed Sarah a favor from when she'd helped birth her grandson. The old woman agreed to watch Emma for a few hours, though her eyes held questions about why Sarah needed to venture out in knee-deep snow. The dog led her away from town, into the forest where even desperate hunters rarely ventured. Sarah's worn boots filled with snow, her toes going numb, but something pulled her forward. Maybe it was madness. Maybe it was the fact that following a strange dog couldn't possibly make her situation worse. The trail wound through a grove of ancient pines, their branches so thick they'd caught most of the snow, creating an almost tunnel-like path. After an hour of walking, her legs trembling from cold and exhaustion, the dog disappeared over a ridge. Sarah climbed after it, her frozen fingers gripping rocky outcroppings, and found herself looking down into a hidden ravine. There, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look, sat an old trapper's cabin, its roof partially collapsed, door hanging open like a broken jaw. The dog was already at the entrance, pawing at something inside. Sarah approached carefully. These abandoned places often sheltered dangerous men, outlaws hiding from justice or madmen driven wild by isolation. But what she found inside stopped her heart. A woman lay curled on the floor, blood frozen in dark pools around her. Native American, from the beadwork on her torn dress. Still breathing, but barely. Her hands clutched a leather satchel to her chest, like it contained her very soul. Sarah's first instinct was to run. Relations between settlers and natives had been violent since the army pushed the tribes from their lands. If anyone found her helping this woman, they'd assume Sarah was a traitor, maybe hang her for it. But then the woman's eyes opened, dark as winter nights, full of pain but also something else. Recognition, like she'd been waiting for Sarah, specifically. "Please," the woman whispered in accented English. Her fingers loosened on the satchel, pushing it towards Sarah. "For the children." Sarah knelt despite her fear. The woman's injuries were severe, knife wounds from what looked like an ambush. But they weren't fresh. She'd been here at least 2 days, maybe 3. Surviving on will alone. "Who did this?" Sarah asked, already pulling off her own coat to wrap around the woman. "Men who fear what I know," the woman managed. She gestured weakly at the dog. "Scout found you, knew you would come." Sarah looked at the dog, suddenly understanding. This wasn't random. Somehow, this animal had chosen her specifically, tested her with its presence last night, then led her here. "We need to get you warm," Sarah said, her healer's instincts overriding everything else. "Can you walk?" "First, listen." The woman gripped Sarah's hand with surprising strength. "Your people are dying. My people are dying. The water is poison. The satchel holds answers." Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't bring a native woman into town openly, but leaving her here meant death. The choice, when she made it, came from a place deeper than fear or prejudice. It came from the same place that had made her feed a starving dog with her last food. Some choices, she realized, you make not because they're smart, but because they're right. Sarah fashioned a makeshift sled from old wooden planks in the cabin, her fingers working despite the cold. The native woman drifted in and out of consciousness as Sarah carefully moved her onto it. The dog, Scout, gripped the rope in its teeth, helping pull as Sarah pushed from behind. The journey back took 3 hours, every minute filled with terror that someone would see them. By the time they reached Sarah's cabin through the backwoods, darkness was falling. Mrs. Brennan had left, and Emma was sleeping peacefully. Sarah dragged the woman inside, laid her near the fire, and finally got a clear look at her injuries. The wounds were deliberate, placed to cause maximum pain but not immediate death. Whoever did this wanted her to suffer. "My name is Sarah," she whispered, cleaning the wounds with melted snow. "Singing River," the woman replied, her voice stronger now with warmth. "I am healer for my people. Was bringing medicine when they found me." Sarah examined the satchel while water heated. Inside were glass vials filled with liquids, wrapped bundles of dried plants, and most surprisingly, papers covered with detailed drawings and notes in both English and native symbols. Maps showing the mountain terrain, marking springs, plants, mineral deposits. One paper showed the water system of Copper Ridge and Silver Falls, with red marks indicating danger. "This is incredible," Sarah breathed. "You documented everything." Singing River managed a weak smile. "White doctor in Denver taught me letters, thought he was civilizing savage woman. I taught him medicine that saved his son from fever. Fair trade." She winced as Sarah applied whiskey to her wounds. "Your daughter, she has the shaking sickness?" Sarah froze. She hadn't mentioned Emma was sick. Singing River pointed to a small basket by the door, filled with Emma's sweat-soaked clothes waiting to be washed. "Can smell the fever root on them. Bad medicine your doctor gives. Mercury makes worse, not better." Singing River pushed herself up slightly, pointing to a green vial in the satchel. "Willow bark and special moss. Bring fever down. Clean blood. Your people call it superstition. We call it 1,000 years of knowing." Sarah hesitated. Trust this stranger's medicine with Emma's life? But what had Dr. Whitman's mercury treatments done except drain her purse and make Emma weaker? "The water," Sarah said, studying the marked map. "You said it's poisoned?" "Mercury from old mines. Flows into river, into wells. Slow poison. Makes babies come wrong. Makes strong men weak. Makes minds break." Singing River's eyes grew fierce. "My people watched your towns grow sick. Some said, 'Let white men die,' from their own greed. But children suffer too. Innocent ones, like your Emma." Sarah gave Emma 3 drops of the green medicine mixed with honey. Within an hour, her daughter's breathing eased for the first time in weeks. Color returned to her cheeks. When Emma opened her eyes, they were clear, not glazed with fever. "Mama, I'm hungry," Emma said, and Sarah nearly wept with relief. Over the next days, as Sarah nursed Singing River back from death's edge, the 2 women traded knowledge. Sarah shared what she knew of settler illnesses, which families were affected worst, who might be trusted. Singing River taught her to identify healing plants, how to prepare medicines, and most importantly, revealed a network of clean springs her people had been using, hidden from white settlements. "Why help us?" Sarah asked one evening as they shared thin soup. "After everything my people have done?" Singing River was quiet for a long moment, watching Scout play gently with Emma. "Hate is poison worse than mercury. It kills the one who carries it first. My grandmother taught me that healing knows no color, no tribe. When Scout found you, brought you to me, I knew. The spirits chose you to be bridge between worlds." Sarah looked at the satchel full of medicine and knowledge. Tomorrow, she would have to figure out how to use this gift without revealing its source. Tonight, she simply held her healthy daughter and thanked whatever force had sent a scarred dog to her door. The morning brought complications. Sheriff Daniels knocked on Sarah's door, his weathered face grim beneath his wide-brimmed hat. Sarah's heart hammered as she answered, keeping the door barely cracked. "Morning, Mrs. Holcomb. Been reports of someone seen dragging something through the woods yesterday. You hear anything strange?"
"Just the wolves, Sheriff. They got my chickens night before."
Last. Sarah kept her voice steady, though sweat beaded on her spine. Behind her, Singing River lay hidden beneath blankets in the root cellar, Scout guarding her. The sheriff's eyes narrowed, studying her. "You look better, Sarah. Less hollow around the eyes. Emma's fever broke. Maybe the Lord finally heard my prayers." He nodded slowly, but his gaze lingered on the floor where, despite her scrubbing, faint bloodstains remained. "You need anything, you tell me. These are dangerous times. Indians been attacking settlements north of here. Wouldn't want trouble finding you and little Emma." After he left, Sarah's hands shook for an hour. That evening, Singing River made an offer that changed everything. "I cannot stay hidden forever. My people need me, and you cannot keep risking your life," Singing River said, her strength returning daily. "But there is another way. Teach you all I know. You become healer for your people, using my medicine. I guide from shadows. They'd never accept remedies from me. I'm just a widow." Singing River smiled. "You think I was always healer? Was young mother, husband killed by white soldiers. My boy, Black Wolf, only 3 summers old. Learned medicine to keep him alive, then helped others. Knowledge doesn't care who carries it." Over the following weeks, they developed a system. Sarah would visit sick families, observe symptoms, then return to describe them to Singing River. Together, they'd prepare remedies, which Sarah would deliver as old family recipes her grandmother from Pennsylvania had taught her. The lie tasted bitter, but watching children recover made it bearable. The first test came when the blacksmith's son developed the tremors, same symptoms that had killed 2 other children that month. Dr. Whitman prescribed more mercury tonics, but the boy's mother, desperate, accepted Sarah's offered tea made from Singing River's medicine. Within 3 days, the tremors stopped. Word spread quietly among the women. "This is dangerous game," Singing River warned one night as they prepared medicines by candlelight. "When powerful men realize you threaten their profits, they strike like cornered rattlesnakes." She was right. Dr. Whitman arrived the next day, furious. "What snake oil are you peddling to my patients, woman?" "Just herbal comfort, doctor. Nothing that could interfere with your treatments." Sarah kept her eyes downcast, playing the simple widow. "The blacksmith's boy should be under my care." "His mother says he's improving with your mercury treatments." "The tea I gave was just for his mother's nerves." The doctor studied her suspiciously but couldn't prove anything. After he left, Singing River emerged from hiding, her face troubled. "He knows something. We need protection." She pulled out a map from her satchel. "My son's camp is here 2 days north. They have more medicine, more knowledge. But they will not trust you without proof of your heart." "What kind of proof?" Singing River unwrapped a beaded band from her wrist, intricate patterns telling stories Sarah couldn't read. "Wear this when you go to them. Tell them Singing River says the bridge is ready. But Sarah, understand, once you take this path, no returning. You become enemy to some of your own people." Sarah looked at Emma, healthy now, playing with Scout by the fire. She thought of the other children in town, suffering from poisoned water, while men like Cornelius Blackwood counted their mining profits. "I already chose my side," Sarah said, taking the bracelet. "The moment I followed Scout into those woods." Singing River nodded, respect in her eyes. "Tomorrow, you learn about the sacred springs, water that gives life instead of death. Your people will need new wells soon, or both towns will become graveyards." The sickness started as whispers, then became screams. First, 3 miners collapsed at the same time down in Shaft 7, their bodies convulsing, foam tinged pink at their mouths. Then, pregnant Mary Patterson lost her baby, the 3rd woman on her street to miscarry that month. By the end of the week, 17 children in Copper Ridge couldn't hold spoons steady enough to eat, their hands shaking like leaves in a storm. Sarah stood in the general store, listening to panicked conversations while pretending to examine fabric she couldn't afford. "It's a curse," Mrs. Henderson whispered. "Ever since the Indians were driven out, nothing's been right." "Nonsense," Mr. Garrett spat. "It's bad air from the mines. Or maybe someone's poisoning wells." His eyes swept the store suspiciously, landing on Sarah. "Some folks been acting strange lately. Secret meetings, strange remedies." That night, Sarah found Singing River weaker than usual, coughing blood into a cloth. "The sickness spreads to my people too," she said weakly. "Water flows downstream from your towns. Black Wolf sends word that 6 children in their camp cannot walk. Elders dying. Some warriors want to attack, take medicine from White Town by force." "There isn't enough medicine in town, doctor. Whitman's running out of mercury tonics, not that they help." Sarah mixed another batch of willow bark tea with trembling hands. "We're making some difference, but it's like trying to bail out a sinking boat with a teaspoon." Singing River grabbed her hand. "No more hiding then. Time for truth, even if dangerous." The next morning, Sarah did something that could have gotten her hanged. She walked into the town council meeting, uninvited, women weren't allowed, and placed a jar of contaminated water on the table. The men fell silent, outraged at the interruption. "This is what's killing us," she announced. "The water's full of mercury from the old mine runoff." "It's poisoning everyone, especially the children." Cornelius Blackwood laughed, his gold teeth gleaming. "And how would a simple widow know about such things? Been talking to Indians, perhaps?" "That's treason, Mrs. Holcomb. I know because I watched children die while you men debate and profit." Sarah's voice carried strength she didn't know she had. "Test the water yourself if you don't believe me." Dr. Whitman stood slowly. "This is preposterous. I've been treating these people with proper medicine. Mercury treatments for mercury poisoning, doctor. You're adding poison to poison. The room erupted in shouting. Sheriff Daniels had to restore order, but the seed was planted. Some families started boiling water longer. Others began walking further to collect from different sources. It wasn't enough, but it was something. That evening, a rock crashed through Sarah's window with a note tied to it. Stop spreading lies or join your husband. But worse news came at midnight. Scout arrived, barking urgently, blood on his muzzle. Sarah followed him to the root cellar, where Singing River lay unconscious, her breathing shallow. Someone had found her hiding spot while Sarah was at the meeting, reopened her wounds. Only Scout's fierce protection had driven them off. They know. Singing River whispered when she came to. Blackwood knows everything, has spies watching. He profits from sick workers. They can't leave. Need constant medical treatment he provides through company store. Healthy people would demand better wages. Might leave for other towns. Sarah felt rage build in her chest. So he's knowingly poisoning hundreds of people for profit? Worse. He plans to buy both towns cheap when enough die. Already has buyers from East waiting. Singing River coughed, specks of blood hitting her lips. Must get word to Black Wolf. Tell him wait, don't attack. If natives attack now, gives Blackwood excuse to call army, kill everyone. Sarah realized they were trapped between a slow death by poisoning and a fast one by violence. But looking at Singing River's determined eyes, she also realized something else. They weren't alone anymore. The mothers who'd accepted her remedies, the families who'd quietly changed their water sources, even Dr. Whitman, who'd seemed troubled by her accusations, they were all potential allies. The revolution wouldn't come with guns or violence. It would come with truth, one converted heart at a time. Sarah crept through the pre-dawn darkness toward the hidden springs Singing River had marked, desperate to gather clean water for the growing number of secretly sympathetic families. She didn't notice the shadow following her until it was too late. Well, the widow Holcomb, sneaking around like a thief. Cornelius Blackwood stepped from behind a boulder, flanked by two armed men. His silver-handled pistol caught the moonlight, or should I say, like a traitor consorting with savages. Sarah's blood turned ice. She tried to run, but the men grabbed her arms, forcing her to her knees. Blackwood pulled the beaded bracelet from her wrist, Singing River's gift, examining it with theatrical disgust. Indian work, fine craftsmanship, the kind of gift given between friends or conspirators. He knelt beside her, his breath reeking of whiskey and tobacco. I knew someone was helping them. Didn't figure it for you, though. Grief makes people do foolish things. People are dying, Sarah spat. Children are dying. People die. That's what they do. The weak perish, the strong prosper. It's nature's way. He stood, brushing dust from his expensive coat. But you've been interfering with nature, haven't you? Playing doctor with Indian magic. My sources saw that savage woman at your cabin. Sarah's heart sank. They knew about Singing River. She was injured, dying. I couldn't just leave her.
How Christian of you! Tell me, where is she now? Where's the gold?
What gold? Blackwood backhanded her, the rings on his fingers cutting her cheek. Don't play stupid. Indians always have gold hidden. That's why she's really here, to retrieve their treasure before we find it. Sarah almost laughed at the absurdity. Singing River's only treasure was knowledge, but Blackwood would never understand that medicine and maps were worth more than metal. There's no gold, she said. Just medicine to help the sick. Medicine? Blackwood pulled out a familiar vial from his pocket, one of Singing River's remedies. This savage poison? I had it tested. Full of things no Christian should put in their body, roots and fungi and God knows what else. It works. The children recover. They recover because I allowed Dr. Whitman to treat them when they can pay. His eyes glinted dangerously. But you've been giving it away free, undermining the natural order, making people question things they shouldn't question. He grabbed her hair, forcing her to look at him. Here's what's going to happen. You'll bring me the savage woman and whatever gold she's hiding. In return, I'll forget your treason. Might even let you warm my bed. since you seem to need protection. Refuse, and little Emma takes a tragic fall down an abandoned mine shaft. Sarah's world tilted. You wouldn't dare. Wouldn't I? Ask the Johnson family. Oh, wait. They all died of fever last winter after refusing to sell their claim to me. Tragic how sickness spreads. He released her, standing. You have until tomorrow night. Bring the savage to the old mine office, or start planning Emma's funeral. They left her sobbing in the dirt, clutching the torn bracelet. Scout found her an hour later, licking her wounds, guiding her home where she found her worst nightmare realized. Emma's bed was empty, a note pinned to the pillow. Insurance. Tick-tock. Widow. Sarah ran to the root cellar where Singing River lay recovering. The native woman took one look at her face and knew. They have her, Sarah choked out. They have my baby. Singing River struggled to sit up, her face grim but determined. Then we stop running, stop hiding. Time to gather the people who are ready to see truth. What people? Nobody will stand against Blackwood. You're wrong. Singing River pulled out a piece of paper, names written in, her careful hand. These came to you for medicine. They know truth in their hearts, even if afraid to speak. The minister's wife whose baby you saved. The prostitute Rose, who secretly helps sick working girls. Joseph, the former slave who knows what it means to be poisoned by those in power. Even Dr. Whitman. I've seen him studying my medicines when he thinks no one watches. Sarah stared at the list, hope and despair warring in her chest. It's not enough. Even if they all helped, Blackwood has guns, money, influence. He has fear, Singing River corrected. We have something stronger. We have mothers who'll fight for their children's futures. We have truth that, once spoken, cannot be unheard. And we have my son. Black Wolf won't help. Not after what my people have done. Singing River smiled sadly. You're not your people anymore, Sarah. The moment you chose Emma's life over their approval, you became something else. You became the bridge. Now we see if others are ready to cross. The abandoned trapper's cabin, where Sarah first found Singing River, became their war room. By midnight, 12 people had answered the desperate call. More than Sarah dared hope. They arrived in shadows, faces covered, but she knew them all. Rose came first, the saloon girl whose rough exterior hid a heart that ached for every sick child in her care. Then Joseph, his massive frame filling the doorway, scars from slavery's chains still visible on his wrists. Mrs. Whitman, the doctor's wife, trembled but stood firm, holding medicine bottles she'd stolen from her husband's office. He knows something's wrong with his treatments, she whispered. Sits up at night, staring at medical journals, muttering about mercury. But he's too proud to admit he's been poisoning people. The minister's wife, Agnes, brought 3 other mothers whose children had survived thanks to Sarah's remedies. Even old Mrs. Brennan hobbled in, fierce as a hawk. That bastard Blackwood foreclosed on my son's farm after he got too sick to work. I'll see him burn. But the biggest surprise was Dr. Whitman himself, arriving last, his face haggard. I followed my wife, he said simply. And I've been following the evidence. Mrs. Holcomb was right. The water's poisoned. I've been making it worse. He pulled out a leather journal. I've documented every death, every symptom. It all points to mercury poisoning. Singing River, though weak, commanded the room's attention. Blackwood has the child. Wants me in exchange. Thinks I have gold. We give him what he expects, but not how he expects. We can't let you sacrifice yourself, Sarah protested. Not sacrifice. Strategy. Singing River pulled out her maps. Black Wolf's warriors are here, ready to attack. Blackwood's expecting that. What he's not expecting is his own people turning against him, Rose spoke up. Half the miners are sick, other half are scared. If they knew Blackwood was poisoning them on purpose, they'd riot. But how do we prove it? Agnes asked. Dr. Whitman cleared his throat. I found something. In Blackwood's office, when I was treating him for gout, letters to Eastern investors discussing how sick workers can't leave, become dependent on company store credit for medicine. He literally wrote that mercury contamination was increasing profits. You could have said something sooner, Joseph growled. I was a coward, Whitman admitted. And complicit. But no more. They worked through the night, planning. Singing River would appear to surrender herself, but she'd carry more than just herself to Blackwood. She'd carry proof, testimonies, and a special gift. One of her medicines that, when burned, created smoke that caused temporary but dramatic symptoms identical to severe mercury poisoning. When Blackwood's men breathe it, they'll experience what our children have suffered, she explained. Non-lethal, but memorable. Meanwhile, the others would spread through both towns, armed with Dr. Whitman's documentation and testimonies from affected families. Joseph would rally the miners. Rose would work the saloons where men spoke freely. Agnes and the mothers would knock on every door. What about Emma? Sarah asked, fear clawing at her throat. Scout suddenly barked, and Black Wolf himself stepped from the shadows. Young, fierce, with his mother's intelligent eyes. I've been watching Blackwood's compound. The child is in the old foreman's house. 2 guards. I can get her out, but only if Blackwood is distracted. Sarah stared at this young warrior, son of the woman who'd saved her daughter. Why would you help us? Not helping you, helping her. He looked at his mother with such love, it broke Sarah's heart. She taught me that healing is stronger than hatred. But if this fails, if they hurt her, my warriors will paint these towns red. It won't fail, Singing River said firmly, because this isn't about red or white anymore. It's about parents saving their children from monsters who wear civilized faces. As dawn approached, they dispersed to their positions. Sarah walked beside Singing River, who, despite her injuries, moved with determined grace. Whatever happens, Singing River said, you've already won. You've shown people that the divide between us is smaller than the divide between those who heal and those who harm. That knowledge will outlive us all. Sarah gripped the woman's hand. We're getting out of this alive. All of us. But as they approached the mine office, seeing Blackwood's men with rifles, seeing the noose they'd prepared, Sarah wondered if courage and truth were enough against bullets and greed. Then she heard it, footsteps behind them. Not just their small group, but dozens of people. Miners, mothers, shopkeepers, all following. The Underground Alliance had become something else entirely. It had become a revolution. Blackwood stood on the mine office platform like a king surveying his domain, the noose swaying beside him in the morning wind. His men formed a semicircle, rifles ready. What he didn't expect was the crowd that had gathered, nearly 100 people from both towns. Their faces no longer showing fear, but something far more dangerous to his power. Anger. Ah, the widow arrives with quite an entourage, Blackwood called out, though his voice carried a tremor. And I see you've brought the savage. Good girl. Sarah stepped forward, Singing River beside her, both women's heads high. Release my daughter first. After I have what I came for. Blackwood's eyes fixed on Singing River. The gold. Where is it? Singing River reached into her satchel slowly, Blackwood's men tensing. She pulled out not gold, but a bundle of papers. Here's your treasure, Mr. Blackwood. What game is this? Dr. Whitman stepped from the crowd. No game, Cornelius. Those are testimonies from 23 families whose children died from mercury poisoning. Poisoning you knew about. He held up his own journal. I have the medical proof. Every death, every symptom, traced back to your mind's runoff. Blackwood laughed, but it sounded forced. The ravings of a drunk doctor and a savage. No court would believe this. They'll believe this, Joseph announced, producing Blackwood's own letters. Your own words, discussing profits from sick workers. Found them right where Doc Whitman said they'd be. The crowd murmured, anger building like a thunderstorm. Blackwood's men looked uncertain, some lowering their rifles slightly. These weren't hired guns from outside. They were local men, men with families, men who drank the same poisoned water. Lies! Blackwood roared. This is a conspiracy led by Indian lovers and traitors. That's when Singing River made her move. She threw the special medicine bundle at Blackwood's feet, and it burst into smoke. Within seconds, Blackwood and his closest men were coughing, their hands beginning to shake. the temporary but dramatic symptoms taking hold. They experienced, for just moments, what the town's children had endured for months. Blackwood fell to his knees, gasping, his body trembling.
"What did you do to me, you savage witch?"
"Gave you a taste," Singing River said calmly, "of what you've been serving our children." The crowd surged forward, but Sarah raised her hand. "Wait, where's Emma? Where's my daughter?" Blackwood, still shaking, laughed bitterly. "Insurance, remember? She's in the old foreman's house. But you'll never reach her in time. I gave orders. If I don't return by noon, they drop her down shaft 7. Sarah's world shattered, but then she heard it. A child's voice, clear and strong.
"Mama!"
Black Wolf emerged from behind the crowd. Emma, in his arms, Scout at his side. The 2 guards who'd been watching her stumbled out after them, covered in what looked like honey and feathers, thoroughly humiliated but unharmed. "Your men were easily distracted," Black Wolf said simply, especially when they thought they were chasing gold. He set Emma down, and she ran to Sarah's arms. Blackwood tried to stand, reaching for his pistol, but found himself surrounded, not just by the townspeople, but by Black Wolf's warriors, who had silently positioned themselves during the commotion. The revolution was complete, but what came next surprised everyone.
"Kill him!"
Someone shouted from the crowd.
"Hang him with his own noose!"
"Make him drink the poisoned water until he dies like our children." The rage was building, about to explode into mob violence. But Sarah, holding Emma tight, looked at Singing River. The native woman was studying Blackwood with an expression not of hatred, but of pity. "No," Sarah said, her voice cutting through the noise. "We're not him. We don't murder for justice."
"Then what?"
Rose demanded.
"Let him go free? Doctor?"
Whitman spoke up. "Exile. Complete financial restitution to affected families. And he drinks a cup of mercury-tainted water every day for a month, just enough to feel what he's done, not enough to kill. Let him live with the shaking, the fear, the sickness he gave to others." Black Wolf stepped forward, his hand on his knife. "My people have a different solution. Let him work in healing. Every day, sunrise to sunset, gathering medicines, preparing remedies, serving those he poisoned. For as many years as children have died, death is easy. Service is hard." The crowd debated, but Blackwood made the choice for them. In his panic and rage, he grabbed for a hidden derringer, aiming at Singing River. Scout leaped, 60 pounds of scarred loyalty, knocking Blackwood backward. The man tumbled off the platform, his head striking a rock with a sound like a dropped melon. He didn't get up. "Doctor." Whitman checked him, shook his head. "He's gone." Nobody mourned. Nobody cheered either. It felt like the end of something poisonous, but not the beginning of something clean. Not yet. The morning after Blackwood's death should have brought violence. Everyone expected it. The miners armed themselves, expecting Black Wolf's warriors to attack. The warriors prepared for the townspeople to blame them for the chaos. Instead, something unexpected happened. Little Emma walked into the middle of the town square, where tensions were highest, holding the hand of Black Wolf's youngest sister, a girl named Morning Dove. The 2 children sat down together and began playing with Scout, sharing a piece of bread. Such a simple act, but it stopped everyone cold. "My mama says your mama saved me," Emma told Morning Dove loud enough for all to hear. "Want to be sisters?" That's when Sarah and Singing River emerged, walking together, carrying baskets of medicine. They set up a table right there in the square and began treating anyone who came forward. Native and settler, side by side, no questions asked. The first to approach was a native woman carrying a baby covered in sores. Dr. Whitman hesitated, then knelt beside Singing River, learning how to apply the moss poultice. Next came a miner's wife with 3 shaking children. Black Wolf himself helped carry them to the table. "This is madness," Sheriff Daniels muttered, but he didn't intervene. His own son was among the sick. By noon, the square had transformed into an open-air hospital. Rose organized the women to bring clean water from the springs Singing River had revealed. Joseph and the stronger miners began building temporary shelters. Even Mrs. Brennan, ancient and cranky, was teaching native children English words while their mothers taught her grandchildren which berries were safe to eat. But not everyone was ready for peace. A group of miners, led by a man named Garrett, confronted the gathering. "You're fools if you think we can trust them. Indians killed my brother 2 summers ago." Black Wolf stood to face him. "White soldiers killed my father 3 winters ago. Yet here I stand, helping your poisoned children. Which of us is the savage?" The tension crackled until Dr. Whitman spoke. "I've been the biggest fool here. I poisoned people with my arrogance, my blind trust in Eastern medicine. These people," he gestured to Singing River and her helpers, "they tried to save us while we were trying to destroy them. If anyone should be exiled, it's me." "No," Singing River said firmly. "You have skills we need. Western medicine and our medicine together, stronger than apart. But first, we must clean the water." That's when young Theodore Blackwood, Cornelius's estranged son, stepped forward. Nobody had seen him arrive from Silver Falls. "My father left detailed records of all the contaminated sites. I also found deeds he was hiding, land grants he stole, claims he forged." He laid the documents on the table. "I'm returning everything to its rightful owners, native and settler alike." The crowd was stunned. Theodore continued. "I'm also using my father's remaining fortune to dig new wells, build a proper hospital, and compensate every affected family. It won't undo his crimes, but it's a start." Sheriff Daniels cleared his throat. "The law needs to be involved in this." "What law?" Sarah asked. "The law that let Blackwood poison children? The law that drove natives from their lands? We're making new law here. Human law." Over the following days, something unprecedented took shape. The 2 towns held a joint meeting, natives and settlers together. They voted to merge into one community, positioned around the clean water sources. They would call it Twin Springs, honoring both peoples, Singing River and Dr. Whitman would run the medical facility together. Black Wolf and Sheriff Daniels would share peacekeeping duties. Sarah would oversee the education of children, both cultures learning from each other. Theodore would manage the economic transition, ensuring fair wages and safe working conditions in the reopened mines. "It won't be easy," Agnes warned at the meeting. "There's too much history, too much hurt." "Hurt doesn't heal by ignoring it," Singing River replied. "It heals by tending it together." The first test came quickly. Word spread to other towns about natives and settlers living together. A militia from Silver Falls arrived, demanding the natives be driven out. But they found themselves facing not warriors, but families. Miners standing beside native hunters, white women linking arms with native mothers, children of both peoples playing together in the street. The militia leader, Captain Morris, surveyed the scene with confusion. "This is unnatural. It goes against everything." "Everything you've been taught," Sarah corrected. "We've learned different lessons here. We've learned that poison doesn't care about skin color. That medicine works the same in every body. That children play the same games in any language," Dr. Whitman added, holding up his journal. "We've also learned that working together, we've reduced mortality by 60% in just 1 week. Our combined medical knowledge is saving lives no single approach could save." Captain Morris left without firing a shot. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. Word would spread. Some would come to learn, others to destroy. But looking around the square, seeing former enemies working side by side, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since James died. Hope, not just for survival, but for something better. Something that could show other frontier towns that the only real enemy was the hatred and greed they'd been taught to carry. 6 months later, Twin Springs barely resembled the dying towns it had replaced. The main street ran between 2 clear streams, with buildings that mixed settler and native architecture. The new hospital stood at the center, its doors marked with both English words and native symbols. Inside, Dr. Whitman carefully took notes while Singing River taught a group of young healers, both white and native, how to identify medicinal plants. Sarah stood at the window of the schoolhouse, watching Emma lead a group of children in a game that Black Wolf's sister Morning Dove had taught them. The children switched effortlessly between English and Arapaho words, their laughter echoing across the valley. Scout lay in a patch of sunlight, his scarred body finally filled out and healthy, watching over them all like a guardian spirit.
"You've got a visitor,"
Rose said from the doorway. She'd traded her saloon dress for practical clothes, now helping run the town's orphanage for children who'd lost parents to the poisoning. Sarah turned to find a woman at the entrance. Thin, hollow-eyed, clutching a small bundle that could only be a baby. Her dress was patched and travel-worn, her face carrying that particular exhaustion Sarah recognized from her own mirror a year ago. The widow's look. "Please," the woman whispered. "My husband died in a mine collapse in Denver. I heard there was a place where people help each other. Where nobody asks where you come from or what you've done. Is it true?" Sarah and Singing River exchanged glances. They'd been expecting this. Word had spread along the frontier about Twin Springs, the place where impossible things happened, where enemies became family, where poisoned land became healing ground. "What's your name?" Sarah asked gently. "Margaret. Margaret Cole. This is my son, Thomas. He's sick. The doctor said he won't make it through winter." Her voice broke. "I've got nothing to pay with." Singing River stepped forward, gently examining the baby. "Lung sickness. From the coal dust. I've seen this." She looked at Margaret with kind eyes. "Payment is simple. You learn, then you teach others. You were helped, so you help. This is the way." Theodore Blackwood arrived with a weekly supply wagon, now bearing food and medicine instead of his father's tools of exploitation. "Mrs. Cole? I have a cottage prepared. The women's collective fixed it up yesterday." Margaret stared in confusion. "But I just arrived." "How did you know?" "Scout knows." Emma piped up, appearing at her mother's side. "He always knows when someone needs us. He goes to the edge of town and waits. Yesterday he waited all day, so we knew someone was coming." The dog lifted his head, his tail thumping once against the floor, as if confirming the child's words. That evening, the town gathered for their weekly meal. Long tables set up in the square, natives and settlers sitting together, sharing food from both traditions. Black Wolf's warriors had brought fresh venison, the miners' wives had baked bread, Singing River's medicinal teas steamed alongside coffee. Sheriff Daniels stood to make an announcement. "Got a letter from the territorial governor. He's sending an inspection committee. Wants to see if what he's hearing is true, or if we need military intervention." "Let 'em come," Joseph said. "Let them see children learning both medicines. Let them count how many lives we've saved." "Doctor," Whitman added, "I've been corresponding with medical colleges back east. They want to send students here to learn our combined approaches. This could change frontier medicine forever." As the sun set, painting the mountains gold and red, Sarah found herself walking with Singing River to the old trapper's cabin where they'd first met. They'd turned it into a memorial, a place to remember those lost to the poisoning, but also a symbol of transformation. "Did you imagine this?" Sarah asked. "When Scout brought me to you," Singing River smiled, "I imagined survival. This is something more. This is what my grandmother dreamed. Not just peace between peoples, but learning from each other, growing stronger together." A bark echoed from the trail. Scout had found someone else, another lost soul needing their help. Sarah saw a figure in the distance, limping, carrying what looked like a child. "Another one," Singing River observed. "Good," Sarah said. "We have room." As they walked back toward town to prepare another welcome, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them here, following a starving dog into the wilderness, finding an enemy who became a sister, discovering that the real poison wasn't in the water, but in the hearts that refused to see each other as human. Twin Springs wasn't perfect. There were still fights, still mistrust, still moments when the past threatened to destroy what they'd built. But every child who played in both languages, every family that formed across old divides, every life saved by combined knowledge, these were drops of clean water, slowly washing away centuries of poison. The stars emerged overhead, bright and countless. Somewhere in the darkness, wolves howled, but the sound no longer brought fear. The people of Twin Springs had learned that the real threats came from those who looked like them, spoke like them, but whose hearts were poisoned by greed. And the real salvation came from those they'd been taught to fear, whose wisdom and kindness transcended the artificial borders humans drew between each other. Scout barked again, urgent now. Sarah and Singing River quickened their pace. Another soul needed saving. Another link in the chain of unlikely redemption that had started with a desperate widow, a dying healer, and a scarred dog who knew that sometimes the bridge between worlds has 4 legs and the wisdom to know which hearts are worth trusting. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of hope and transformation. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that humanity's greatest strength lies in our ability to see past our differences and heal together, please click the like button and subscribe to this channel. Tomorrow, we'll share another amazing tale that proves love and compassion can bloom even in the harshest ground. Until then, remember, sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the enemy we've been taught to fear becomes the family we choose to love.